Can you each speak more specifically now about some other strategies in addition to things like training and trying to cultivate sort of maybe post-employment connections, specifically around the function of compensation and benefits, and how competitive is the industry really, particularly, Regan, as you were mentioning, with competition being particularly fierce in your part of the world. How does the hospitality industry compare with regard to compensation and benefits and other types of things that we're trying to do to maintain some degree of distinctiveness, to grow interest in the industry, and also keep people who we want to keep and can keep around a little bit longer?
Right. I think it varies from market to market out here in Asia. But I would say in general, if you are looking at, for example, pure base pay, just simply the base pay, we may not, especially at the entry level, we may not necessarily be a competitive industry compared to some other, industries. However, if you look at more of the total reward component of it, so apart from the base pay, in Asia hotels, you get free, free food, you eat a couple of meals a day. Generally, you have various allowance based on the shift that you work. In many countries, they have something called a service charge, which is, basically gratuity that's collected from the guest that is then given back to the employees. And once you add all of that up, a person's, how much a person actually takes home and saves. In some countries, they actually are taking home and saving more money than somebody who's working at the bank tower in a bank. And so you'd be amazed at some of the people that come actually to apply for working in hotels. So I think if you have to kind of look at it as a total reward perspective. And I think in addition to that, of course, the work environments generally in hotels are better than in other industries. And it's just a better teamwork environment.
Agreed. I think that we've got a baseline from a competitive standpoint that there's no doubt we get challenged. We're a labor-intensive business. We're 365, 24/7. You're never going to get away from that. However, I think that the holistic part that Regan was talking about the workplace is a completely different component than a lot of other industries. And the service component and delivery and the teamwork and the professionalism that goes into it creates a very different atmosphere. So aside from everything that Regan has already said in terms of the comp and benefits that you typically are doing and you continuously are baselining to make sure, one of the things, and Bruce, you were talking about different things that you're creating as initiatives. I think that the industry has a better story to tell as it relates to flexibility, as it relates to the fact that we've got schedules all throughout the day to compete and manage through different lifestyles that people have. One of the things, though, that the caveat I would have with that is that there's a challenge in that there are long work hours sometimes, and it is a difficult industry, and we have to work to make sure we stay attractive. And so we've just started introducing things called live-in sync, which is really about looking at the individual and saying, what do you really need to manage your life and schedule? And let's not see if we can work on that, because we've worked as an industry for so long where it's compartmentalized to say we need it this way. And I think the world has changed. Technology has changed how we have to look, and the guests are asking for different things. So we need to make sure that we can provide that atmosphere, not just on the comp and ben side, but I think it's looking at a different component where we can get a little bit more creative in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
We have found that one of the things that we can do that really get people to think long term, we do through our 401k program in the US. If somebody saves 5%, they get another 4% match. And if you take a look at what that adds up to over a long period of time, it is astonishing to people for them to see that if they make a commitment to this job and this organization, and they just save their 5%, and we give them another 4%, and it just performs as it historically has performed, it is more money than they ever thought they possibly could accumulate in life. So it's part of the whole getting people to think long term as well. Now, what we do is we've found it most effective to default people into the program, that it applies to everybody. They can pull out if they want, but they've got to do something to pull out. And that works a lot better than requiring them to do something to get into the program. So everybody that starts with us is defaulted into this 401k program. And after a couple of years, they start to see their statements, and then they really enhance and upgrade their commitment to staying in the industry and with the company.
One of the things, just to tag on to what Alan is saying, is I think that's important is communication. I don't think that you can underestimate the component of making sure people understand all of the various components that do go into their total rewards. And I think that at times, it's not, for a lot of people, it's not something they really want to talk about, but I do think making sure that people understand, A, how we're benchmarking ourselves against somebody else, why it's done this way, and B, what their benefits are, making sure that they feel comfortable with it is a critical component as well that you can't underestimate. So that's a part of your retention strategy, is making sure that you've got great communication plans about the programs you're offering.
Right. And, a couple of years ago, we had done a study trying to understand the causes for turnover. And really it boils down, at least in my part of the world, to two things. One is your compensation, and the other part of it is career opportunities. People leave because of better pay or a better job. And so, we rolled out two initiatives. One is what Heather just talked about, communicating to the to our associates, what is their total reward? A lot of times they're thinking of maybe just the base pay. And we say, well, think of, apart from the base pay, when you're evaluating what your total compensation is, there's all these other components, your insurance, your retirement programs, the food, free laundry, all these other perks, the training, career opportunities. And once you put it all down in writing and share it with them, they're like, oh yes, I am getting a lot while I'm working here. The other piece that I talked about was career opportunities, and people are leaving because of better career opportunities, and so we're saying, well, we have so many hotels that we're opening, so let's try to get these people to think of that they can have a career without having to leave the company. And a lot of times what happens is a lot of managers tend to be very territorial. Their best people, they don't want them to leave. And you would hear associates say that it's easier for me to tell my boss that I'm going to go work for the competitor than wanting to transfer to the other department or transfer to a sister hotel down the road. And I said fundamentally that is wrong. And then so we really push hard at getting our managers to talk about careers with their people, and we also put measured and put targets for our managers in terms of what we call positive management moves, or positive moves of their direct reports. And that's really helped us with our retention, and it's helped us increase our engagement significantly over the last couple of years.
I will say one thing about the morale in the industry as well. It's never going to be the highest paying industry. It's not the lowest paying, but it's not going to be the highest paying. However, my company owns companies in a number of different industries: energy, insurance, the watch industry, the theater industry. And people in the hospitality industry and employee surveys are every year invariably the happiest with their jobs. The highest morale is in the hospitality. People love the work, and they love their coworkers if you run it in a way that that shows that you really appreciate that they are with you. Much more so than higher paying jobs. So, it's like they say, money can't buy happiness. It really is true. You can pay people more money, but they're not necessarily going to like the job.
Thanks very much for your insights. It's clear that there are a number of factors that can contribute to employee retention. And we learned about several factors today. One is that in addition to having a fairly competitive total compensation and rewards program, factors such as effective employee training programs and opportunities and a supportive and engaging work environment are keys to making sure that people are not only fulfilled in their jobs, but have a long-term career in the hospitality industry.